Will, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, brother Rich?
Better than I deserve.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm looking forward to today's show. I'm actually very happy with how the slide deck came together. And sometimes when you're not like going for a real theme of something, it just all kind of falls together. And that's what happened with this one.
I'm looking forward to it. I have not seen today's show, so I'm going to be stumbling through it just like the audience.
All right. All right. Well, that would make you and me both then, because I did it a couple days ago, and my memory is not what it used to be.
Oh,
So
I got Will Rhodes is on already,
awesome, awesome. The Wills got the rich outnumbered.
as
And
always.
here comes Guile to even things up. How you doing, brother Guile?
Good morning, Guile. Good morning, Will. Will is coin number 2268 out there in beautiful Missouri. Hope you're doing well, sir. Will Parker was here over the weekend. Really good time with him. He's traveling up to see his daughter on his motorcycle. Just left out this morning about 6 a.m. So I hope he has a safe journey. We got Tony is on. Alan Kelly is on. Good morning, Jets. Coin number 1571 from Occupied, Virginia. Our good friend Ted Leonard, coin number 1461. Well, what's this coin number I keep hearing about?
This coin number right here. Okay, it's that spot, and depending where you went at, where I grew up, it was junior high, maybe in middle school for some of you. This is the elevator pass. That's what it is. And what it really is, though, is the pass to better protecting you and your family from things that happen in life. You get access to the training vault, a ton of great articles in that training vault. I'd say it's highly suggest start with the assessment, see where you are. That will assess your skills for medical, ground fighting, pistol, rifle, shotgun, medical skills. And then you can, once you figure out where your skills are deficient, then you can dig into those specific areas, improve your skills, be better able to protect yourself, your family, and your community.
Man, you nailed it, brother. Nailed
Been
it.
working on that since the last show. Yeah.
Very impressed.
So,
well, I'm looking forward to today's show, man. So without
all
much
right.
further ado, I tell you what, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some people throw around words like masterpiece, Will, not me. But there are those that say that On Violence and Varietals, Confessions of a Savage Sommelier by your old pal Rich Brown is a
Yep.
literary tour de force. I wouldn't say that.
I would be one of those. Yes, I would.
Well, if you want to pick up a copy or you want to just take a trip down memory lane with your old pal Rich Brown, go to therichbrown.com. Chuck Renfro is on. It says, have a blessed day in Texas. I was just in your beautiful state, Chuck. Up there going through Amarillo on my drive back. Ted says, cool t-shirt. What does your t-shirt say there, Will?
It says, truth is poetry. People hate poetry.
Man, I tell you.
It's a play on the from The Big Short. So,
and that was a made-up quote, was it not?
It was, yeah. It was in one of those. I think when you watch it on Amazon, you go into the X-ray and see the trivia and stuff. And it was a made-up quote. I still like it though, because if you look around the world, people like to be pacified, I guess, with their own view of the world, and then whoever backs that up, and we're all guilty of it. We all have to watch that that inclination, that human frailty.
Yeah, true. All right, let's see what you got for us. What's going on with this fear and greed index?
All right, fear and greed is at 44 as of last Friday. That's from CNN. It's their measure of I think it's 6 different things in the stock market. So this is what's driving the stock market right now. It's been hovering right between this high end of fear, low end, and neutral here for quite a while. The market's really going sideways. There isn't a lot going on out there. Kind of waiting to see how things break. And honestly, when I say break, I mean, do they break to the positive or the negative? And I really don't, unless something happens in the world, or maybe after the debate something else happens. I really don't see things breaking one way or the other really the rest of this year, barring some outside force being applied to the markets, because the Biden administration is pretty happy to just let things cruise along through the election, and really probably so is the Trump campaign. And they're both, I would guess, pretty happy to just have a recession start next year. Trump would be able to blame it off on, well, it was everything Biden did. And if it's under Biden, well, he got reelected. He can't do it again anyway. So write it out and try to be the big hero. So I think kind of the whole machine is okay, just kind of going sideways the rest of this year.
Going sideways.
So,
Oh boy.
yep. So,
I mean, that's a pretty bold prediction for you. Normally, you're a little bit more reserved than to say relatively with a lot of clarity. I don't see much happening the rest of this year
you know,
in the economy.
right. Now, the housing market may be a little different, but as we've seen in the past, speaking of the Big Short, it takes a long time for any of these major portions of the economy to turn. And what we're certainly seeing it in the housing market, especially in Florida and the pandemic boom towns like Austin, Boise, places like that. We're seeing that turn, but even that takes a long time. Let's remember, Dr. Michael Burry almost went bankrupt because his timing was off.
That's exactly right.
And had he not had just enough money to get through to the actual housing crash, we would not know his name, and he would have gone bankrupt. It would just been a footnote in hedge fund history, instead of a living legend. So there is a saying in stock market trading, being early is the same as being wrong.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, it really is. So you got to be right, and you got to be right at the right time.
Wow. Yeah.
So now let's go back to that one. Let's talk about crude oil here just a little bit. So this is crude oil. It went down from, say, April through June 4th there, where I got that line drawn. It's popped back up. I didn't look to see what it was doing this morning, but that's a 12% move there in about a month. June 4th, actually, I think it was about 3 weeks. But let's remember that a change in crude oil prices is reflected in reflected in gas pump prices, I should say, in about a month. It's about a 30-day lag. It takes about that long for a barrel of crude to make it all the way through the system to your gas pump. So this tells us that this 12% increase was from June 4th to June 18th. So that would tell us about late July, we're going to see about a 10-12% increase in our gas prices. So a lot of times watching this stuff, you can literally tell the future in a very short term. But this will also, as we watch how this plays through, this will then play through to CPI, right? And that will drive other things. That will drive inflation to be stickier, higher for longer, as they say. And then that drives the Federal Reserve response. That drives things inside of campaigns, right? That'll give Trump some talking points. Look at gas prices, right? And then, we will get into, does Biden continue refilling the political petroleum reserve, or does he go the opposite way? Now, I think he'll bide his time. He'll get it filled up enough. He can start dumping oil on the market probably September, October to get that price down right before the election. Be my bold prediction.
But pricing is relative. Let me go back here because so let's see. I filled up in California before I left a couple of days ago, and I'm looking at the picture that took of the pump. $5.99 a gallon for regular. It was $6.39 for diesel, and premium was $6.39. Let's see here. So then I drove across the line into Arizona, and it was $3.29 a gallon.
Yeah. It's almost like elections have consequences.
Yeah, exactly. Almost $3 a gallon is what you're paying in taxes just to be in California, let alone what you're paying in property taxes, etc. So, no wonder what people are fleeing. No wonder.
And it's taxes, it's regulation, it's different gas formulas. There was a headline I almost put on for the last slide tonight, this morning, and it was two headlines out of California. One was a woman and her kids were at the beach, and her kids were digging up clams. They didn't know. They thought they were seashells. That's an $88,000 fine.
Oh, my God.
Meanwhile,
kidding me.
People are running into stores and mass shoplifting, stealing. Let's just call it what it is, stealing. And as long as it's under $1,000, you're good to go. Don't worry about it.
Nobody takes into account the intent. The intent of the mother and the child picking up seashells, completely innocuous, completely innocent. They didn't mean to disturb the habitat of the snail dart or whatever the hell they were bothering. Whereas the intent of the organized retail theft rings is clear.
Yes.
And don't get in their way. What's
Oh
what's
yeah.
Craig say? Craig is
You know,
on.
Craig brings his sense of humor to the show, which is much appreciated. Says, "Good afternoon, Colonial Traders."
That's
Uh,
us.
he's been busy for a little while late, but popped in to give us share some of his sarcasm with us, and we love it, sir. Make it
Yeah.
here as often as you can, please. And what's Alan say there about prices by him?
Up to $3.19 a gallon from $2.99. Well, you're one of the lucky ones, brother,
Mm-hmm.
to be paying that price relative
Yep,
to a lot of the folks out there in Warrior Nation.
yep. So, so this is something you can keep an eye on, guys. You can go right on Yahoo Finance or Google stocks and just type in WTI or just type in oil just to get a general direction. And now, if you don't have an ability to store a bunch of gas, this at least lets you see what's coming for your family budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you can go, okay, we can expect this next month, in the next month or so, and then be prepared for it. Don't be shocked like everybody else pulls up to the pump and is like, what happened here, right? And taking away that shock and that surprise helps you make better decisions for your family.
100%.
All right. So we touched on this last week, Rich, the CDK
Mhm.
outage, and I want to dig into it just a little bit more because I got thinking about it.
Can you,
And
for those that weren't on last week, can you explain what was going on?
first, shame on you. Okay. If you weren't here last week, I'm kidding. Of course. Glad to have you here now. So CDK, this is the outfit that they do a cloud-based service for car dealerships. And they use them, they can be used just for sales, for the sales process, for the salesman, the sales manager, when they go through and you sign all the paperwork on the iPad nowadays, all that's cloud-based. It can also do all the scheduling for the service department. It can do inventory control. It can literally do one end to the other of a dealership, everything that it touches, but not all dealerships use it for all those things. Okay. So when this goes down, they're back to pen and paper and probably looking around going, where those forms go that we used to use?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. And I'm kind of supposing here, guys. Okay, let's suppose those forms were saved up on the cloud inside their CDK account. Well, now those forms aren't even there. Okay, now me being an old guy, I would have a form somewhere in a file in a filing cabinet, ready to hit the copy machine. But that's an old guy's way of
How
doing stuff.
dare you to not trust the system, man?
Gee, I wonder what could cause that. Experience, that'd be it.
Yeah.
So CDK, this is what really got me thinking about this, Rich, isn't so much the car dealerships, even though we're going to dig into some numbers here, but we tend to think about, oh, they're attacking, the hackers are going to attack the banking system, right? They're going to attack my bank. I'm not going to get access to my funds. Well, is there a CDK for your bank, something they use to facilitate everything that's happening,
I'm
that's
sure.
also used maybe by thousands of other banks instead of each bank coming up with their own thing, right?
Yep.
So is there a CDK for banking? Is there a CDK for credit cards? Those are merchant accounts, is what the store owners use, right? So I had fallen into, they're going to attack the bank, the dealership, if you will. Well, what if they attack the infrastructure that those entities use that are dependent on to make business happen? Well, now this particular attack in CDK affected 15,000 dealerships across the country. So
Mm-hmm.
they're getting a lot of bang for their buck on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what really got me thinking about it, is kind of like the grid, right? They're not going to attack Wisconsin Public Service. Well, I'm sure they are attacking Wisconsin Public Service up here where I live in Wisconsin. But rather, if they attack the infrastructure that goes on behind the scenes that people who are not in the industry have never heard of, who outside the car industry ever heard of CDK before this, right?
Never heard of it.
So it really got me thinking about, okay, so you could have a widespread attack and be like, oh, they attacked who? Huh?
Mhm.
What's that matter? Right. So that's what really got me thinking about this. So, so as we dig into this, they're talking about an outage lasting through June 30th, yesterday, would mean 10 days without dealerships being able to access this. If sales slide even 10% at the average dealership as a result, retail auto sales would dip about $4 billion for the month. Okay.
Damn.
Yeah, that's like real money. I mean,
That's
that's like Rich Brown money right there. Okay.
not even close.
Um, yeah, I know you get you. I mean, I've seen those $1 trillion notes you've got laying around. I've seen those. Okay. Um,
I like to
but
brag.
but in this guy exactly. But this Russell chief economist at Ameriprise Financial said the average dealership will probably experience a more drastic drop, closer to 40% for each day the outage drags on. And the last I looked, which was yesterday, this outage is still going on. Okay.
Uh,
So if it ends up lasting 10 days, they're looking at $16 billion in lost sales.
but is this an outage or is this a ransomware attack?
This is a ransomware attack. So
Okay.
when he's talking
Because
about
when
the
we say
outage,
outage, is kind
yeah,
of like,
yeah,
it's
you're
not
right.
really true.
Yeah, right. It is. It's a ransomware attack, and the I don't know car dealership association, what it's called, they're talking about paying it because they need to get their dealerships back up and running. So this would
Will
depress
that encourage further attacks? We'll think.
for sure. Yeah.
Of course.
Yep. But you put the band-aid on the problem right now, right? So, so this guy, he estimates that would depress total retail sales by 2.3%. Now we talk about retail sales reports, right?
Mhm.
But this would affect the entire retail sales of the country by 2.3%. That would drag it negative.
Wow.
Okay, so as an economics geek, I started thinking about that, going, okay, yeah, but we'll put a little asterisk by that, right? I mean, the Fed isn't going to go change policy because of a cyber attack,
Mhm.
right? I mean, they're not going to. I mean, they at least are smart enough to do that. However, it will affect things for real because, well, if the retailers can't move that truck off the lot, do they need that other one from GMC or Toyota?
Nope.
Well, then you can run that right back through the supply chain all the way back to steel manufacturers, right?
Mhm.
So it's like that's when I kind of
Trickle
went,
down,
oh,
man.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay. So there are real consequences to this, other than just you can't go pick up your new F-150 to push down the road, right?
Right.
All right. So as we're looking at this, guys, and these these attacks are gonna continue. They're working, and if they pay this, it's gonna encourage them to do more because why wouldn't they?
Do you
Right?
remember that Mel Gibson movie from the 90s? I think it was called Ransom,
Yes, I do.
where
His son.
yeah, he was a
Yeah.
billionaire and they kidnapped
Mhm,
his only son and was holding
mhm,
him. And once he felt like they weren't playing in good faith, he's like, "This is the money." He went into a movie studio. "This is the money I was going to give you. Now you're
mhm.
not getting a penny of it. This is the
Yep.
closest you'll ever come. I'm gonna pay to have you hunted down." And that's what they should do.
Yep.
I'm gonna pay Anonymous or some other, rogue
Yep.
hacker organization to
Mhm.
tell me where you're at and what mom's basement you're in, and I'm gonna send some former JSOC dudes in to peel your skin off.
Yep. Yep. And
I'm not
and
playing with you anymore.
and just like everything else, I mean, this is an attack on our infrastructure, on our economy,
Our way of life.
our way of life, and it trickles through to everything, right? So this is not just some car dealerships. Oh, boo-hoo, you're going to have writer's cramp by the end of the day. There's more to it than that, and I'll be the first to say that at the beginning I was kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah. And then it offers the hackers, these hackers and other hacker groups, here's the blueprint.
Exactly.
Here's where you get more bang for your buck because they do have to look at this as a business, right? They're putting time, effort, they need to eat, they need to whatever, right? So they're going to look at this as a business, and they're getting a lot more bang for their buck by attacking the system behind what we see as regular people.
Yeah, the Norwegian ships, they were getting hit by Somali pirates, and they were just paying the money. And then somebody come up with the idea, why don't we just put some guys on there? And we're in international waters. We'll just start killing these people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then suddenly the attack started slowly going down.
Yep.
Wonder why.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a look at Craig's comment here, because I've got funny, I think it's funny anyway, anecdote about that. What's he say?
Says, hopefully they'll attack my bank and put my money into my account.
So I called up my credit card one time to pay my bill for the month, be a responsible human being.
For once.
And yeah, that was once. I can always say I was responsible It's a true statement, right?
Responsible ish.
Yeah, exactly. Later on today, I'm going to run with scissors just to even things out. So I call and I go, hey, I need to make a payment on my card, please. Here's the card number. And they're like, okay, we need to verify your identity. I'm like, why? If someone else calls and tries to pay money on my account, please let them.
Exactly.
Don't verify their identity. Just take their money and put it into my account, please. And the lady was just like, well, I'm not sure we could do that. I'm like, oh, you can. Trust me. I give you permission now. This is a recorded line. I'm giving you permission. So
I have that
for whatever it's
experience
worth.
every single time.
Yeah, it's like,
and we're trying to pay off an excavator for the company. I need to pay, I don't know, $20,000 of wire transfer, and it's like they're wanting my birthday and all this crazy stuff. I'm like, what do you need? Who in God's name is going to call you with an account writing number to pay $29,000 to pay off an excavator? Does this happen every day? Random crazy terrorists paying people's shit off? Come on, man. It's insane.
It is.
It's intrusive. It's violating it for no reason.
Yep. Absolutely.
And before we go any further, let's welcome some folks on, man.
Yeah,
Ian is on from Nashville.
Awesome.
God bless you, man. What's Ted say?
He says a big Gulf storm can bump gas prices and rigs being evacuated. Absolutely it can. So watch your news and think about those downline consequences.
Yeah. Matt is on, but he's got to run to the range. John Trevor is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. What's Alan say?
He says the medical profession has a similar system interacting with other facilities, and you can imagine the chaos that would ensue. He's absolutely right. And we talked about last show. We went through. I went through. My family went through. My wife went through and got copies of all of our medical records, printed them off, put them in a 3-ring binder. That way, at least if we show up for some sort of emergency care, we're not going off our memories. We're in a stressful time. Here it is. It's all printed off in this binder.
We did the same exact thing, Will. For the pets records, our records, got it in a fireproof box, but I also have it all scanned into my terabyte. So walk in. Here you go.
Yep.
What's Bill saying?
And I would do that for 2 of my dogs, as we discussed the third one just before the show, and I'll burn the remainder of my man card after this. It's a toy Bernedoodle, guys.
I wasn't gonna.
It was the trade off to get the dream car. So I bit the bullet, and I know the car will last longer than the dog in the big scheme of life. So eventually things will even back out. But she's actually a pretty good little dog. So key being little there. Well, let's see here. Bill says, good morning, gents. Morning to you, sir. As to ransomware attacks, they often primarily attack healthcare or finance. Healthcare, because pretty much everything is dependent on your access to information on patients, and finance for obvious reasons. And there's a real, I think he's dead on there. Thanks for the input there, Bill. And the other part of that too is you're also going to experience, and did experience during the Ascension hospital attack, the danger of the nurses and doctors not being able to access those systems, because those systems, when you say, hey, we're going to give, Joe, this much of this medication, it'll now flag it and say, oh, no, there's an interaction with something else Joe is taking. That went away, and that's going to slow things down. When you slow care down, now you've got, and you had during the Ascension attack, healthcare workers working insane hours and under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and, people got hurt.
Yeah.
So, yep.
What is it? The third or fourth leading cause of death in this country is medical malpractice. I'm not crapping on the medical industry. I'm just saying they already are struggling enough, and we're going to add on to that. Derek is on from North Carolina. Good morning. Let's see.
Bill says third. I assume he's talking about the attacks on or the cause of death there. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. So let's continue to watch the continuing threat of these cyber attacks into the, I'll call it the behind the scenes stuff. What's Alan say there?
He says quid pro quo on the dog. Well, wives aren't stupid. Built 2 guns equals granite countertops. I hear you, man.
Yeah, I think you lost out on that one though, brother. I think the whole cost benefit analysis thing there. So I would get at least one more gun out of that if I was you.
No doubt.
All right. So U.S. new home sales plunged unexpectedly last month. This is from CNN Business. And this last month they're referring to as May in this article. And really, what I'm seeing is we've been talking about the housing market getting near a top and getting ready to go back down. Now it's starting to make a lot of mainstream news, a lot. And I think that's the thing we're going to see them is now people are going to start looking around at it, right? And once they look around and go, hey, yeah, home prices are really high. Oh, they are starting to come down. We'll wait too. And that starts to drive more activity like that. I've been talking to realtors in Florida for, 2 years now, and been watching this and being patient and biding my time. And I just spoke to another realtor 2 weeks ago. And the quickest way I rule out a possible realtor I'm looking to talk to in an area is I ask them, well, what is it, a buyer's market or a seller's market right now? And if they try to put any kind of spin on it, I don't talk to them again.
Yeah.
The ones who come around and go, yeah, it's a buyer's market. And everybody's, and this last one I talked to, she was like, yep, everybody's waiting right now until after the election, see what interest rates do into next year. She was very straightforward about the state of the market. And therefore, I'll continue to talk to her about representing us in a purchase if we decide to use a realtor. The other ones, I should just block their number. They're not honest, so I'm not going to deal with them.
Exactly.
So it says here in this article, high interest rates and expectations. There's the key part right there. That's the psychology of it. Expectations that they'll remain elevated for longer than expected are weighing on America's home builders. So in the past, Rich, we've talked about that expectation, that bias, that people, once that gets entrenched into people, same way in the past, we've talked about a lot with inflation. That's what happened in the 70s. Inflation is here forever. It's never going to go away. It's a lot harder to get rid of something once people expect it, because then they look for it everywhere, right? Yep. It's like if you're going to go buy a new green F-150, right? What do you start seeing on the road everywhere?
Green F-150s.
That's it. Same thing here. So when people start to expect to see interest rates stay up, house prices come down, then that's all they see. And that's all they hear when they're talking to people, right? Very difficult to break that out. So that tells us this is going to be a long road to hoe for the government to change this, okay? U.S. home builder, I know this is home builder sentiment, soured in May for the second month in a row. Now, in finance, there's an old saying, one piece of data, that's a data point. Doesn't really mean anything. 2 gives you a line between 2 data points. And if you get to a third one, now you have a trend.
Right.
And then it becomes self-reinforcing. So this is 2 months in a row that home builders are seeing sentiment come down. Now, this is an important distinction because it's home builders. They're seeing ahead in the market, right? Because they're not talking to people who want to buy a house right now. They're talking to people who want to build a house, which is going to take months. So what home builders see is what will happen to the home market months in the future. So that's why it's an important distinction to make with the home builders. Okay. Yep. The bottom part of this here, housing starts fell 5.5%, the lowest level since 2020, 1.28 million units. This is important, guys, because to sell that house at some point, you got to start it, right? File it under duh, right? But this is your future indicator. So if starts fall 5.5%, it won't be a linear thing, right? But new home sales will fall about 5.5% some months down the road because they didn't start them, right? Now, what happens even before you start a home? You get a permit. Well, building permits, seen as a bellwether of future construction, dropped 3.8. So this article doesn't say where that dip for the 3.8 is, that a smaller dip or a larger dip than in the past, but the bottom line is the trend is still down. So that what's all this tell us about future home sales? They're going to be down. So what's that tell us about furniture sales, durable goods sales, your refrigerators? How you need more or less trucking if you're building fewer homes and people are buying fewer of these things, right? What's this tell us about Home Depot,
sheetrocking, everything?
Exactly. It all goes back through there, So This is why I like to look at this stuff, because you can tell the future months out. It's not a perfectly linear thing. Existing home sales could go up because the new home sales are going down. We also know there's a ton of rental markets coming on the property, ton of multifamily coming on the property, coming out of the market over the next couple of years. So this is a little blurb like this can give us a lot of information. Okay, what's Ted have to say here about insurance?
Ted says insurance, federal flood, and private property is going up annually per coastal pals very much, even if not so-called flood zones, not cheap anymore. Impact has to be real.
Yep, and it's really impacting Florida. And it's impacting outside of Florida because we're all paying for the insurance companies covering for the hurricanes down there too. And that's insurance. That's how it works. We all get to. It's socialism at its best. We all get to pay in after some people stub their toe, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think we pretty much beat that dead horse.
Yeah.
Now, so everything comes back around to banks at some point, because that's, as Dillinger said, that's where the money is, right?
That's right.
So fearing losses, banks are quietly dumping real estate loans. Okay. So the top part of this one, these steps indicate a grudging acceptance by some lenders of the banking industry strategy of extend and pretend is running out of steam, and that many property owners, especially owners of buildings, are going to default on mortgages. This means big losses for lenders are inevitable and bank earnings will suffer. Okay, so now they're really getting here, guys. This is commercial real estate. They're really specifically talking about office buildings here, because nobody's going to the office compared to what they used to. So extend and pretend. So this is where banks will extend your loan and pretend everything's going to be okay. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so what they do is they say, okay, Rich, we know your balloon payment is up on this piece of office building on July 2nd of 2024. And we know you can't refinance it because it's gone down in value too much. So we're going to give you a 2-year extension at the same interest rate, even though we're going to lose money on that, because they're going to have to borrow the money at a higher rate than you're going to pay the interest on, because they're going to give you the old interest rate. They're going to extend on that and pretend things are going to be all better in 2 years, because at least during that 2 years, the banks don't have to admit they got a bad loan on the books. Okay, so the banks aren't doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this
game of
because
kick the can, though, right?
it is absolutely. But the banks are doing this because they don't want it on their books. Because once they realize that loss, now they have to. That goes on the books. It goes to the regulators, goes to their investors if they're a privately held bank, and it becomes public if it's a publicly owned bank. That becomes public knowledge that, hey, these guys just lost a bunch of money. So they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it to protect themselves. Okay. And these steps they're referring to here, paraphrasing later in the article, this isn't mom and pop neighborhood bank. This is Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank. Okay. Offloading commercial properties, sometimes at a loss, but it's a loss that's locked in at the current level. So let's just say it was, I'm going to make the math easy on myself. It was a $100 million property and they're going to eat a $10 million loss on it. Well, it can't become a $30 million loss. And that's the only way I would offload something like that, right? I mean, if you or I went out and bought a investment property, whether it be commercial or residential real estate, and it went down in value 10, 20%, but we could handle that, service that, and we thought the market was going to do better in the future, we wouldn't get rid of it, right?
Right, exactly.
But what if we thought it was going to go down another 30, 40%? I'd offload it for what I could and eat my loss and write it off of my taxes and move on with life, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the fact that these banks want to get rid of this at a loss, that tells me they expect more losses in the future. So they'd rather just push it off to some other bank and be like, have fun with that. You got a great deal.
Hasta luego, baby.
Exactly. Y'all have fun with that. All right. So 1.17% of all loans held by banks were delinquent, meaning more than 30 days past due. Now, bear in mind, in the aftermath of 2008, commercial real estate loan delinquencies peaked at 10.5% delinquent in 2010. So let's also bear in mind, it took a couple years for it to filter
Exactly.
all the way through back then. So looking back on it, it all seems like it happened pretty fast, but at the time, it took years to grind through all of this. Okay. So the fact that this is building now, where this is the this is the beginning stages, and it takes a long time to get there. It's a process, right? So here's the next thing to keep in mind, and you and I have addressed this with our personal finances, Rich. Regional and community banks, those with 100 billion in assets or less, account for 2/3 of the commercial real estate loans on bank balance sheets. And of the loans held by community banks having less than 10 billion in assets, and they lack the diversified revenue streams of larger banks. So in other words, these smaller banks, they're kind of all in on commercial real estate. And the reason that happens is the big banks don't understand these small markets, like small town Wisconsin, small town Tennessee. So it's not worth it for them to send somebody from New York City or Nashville out to your area, or from Madison to my area, to look at the market and do all this research to make relatively little money compared to what they put into it. So the smaller local banks handle that.
And why should they, though? Because if you're a GSIB, you're too big to fail. So why do I even need to get my slide ruler out and try to figure out what's going on in these small markets? It's irrelevant.
Exactly.
I take a bad risk and I lose, you lose.
Right. And as it talks about here, the very last sentence of this, Don, no worries being late, brother. Just glad to have you here. These smaller, more local banks, they don't have the diversified revenue streams of the larger banks, like your JP Morgan, like your Citi. They're not worldwide. They can't be like, okay, yeah, maybe the U.S. real estate market's getting ready to go down, but we've got a bunch of money invested in India, which is booming, right? So they don't have that. So and why does this matter? I'm glad I pretended you asked, because if you've got money with these local banks, right? Or say you have a loan with these local banks, or you bank with them and you want to go to them and say, hey, I need a car loan, I need a home improvement loan, I need a loan to go buy a duplex because I want to invest. Well, these smaller banks are going to be like, whoa, we're not doing great right now. They're not going to come out and admit that. They're just going to tighten their lending standards in the parlance. They're going to be like, oh, no, you need to have 25% down.
Yeah.
So they're not going to tell you no outright. Because they don't want to, end this relationship with you, but they'll just sit there and be like, oh, we're just going to make it a little tougher for you to get the loan. So we're not going to say no to you specifically. We're like, oh, no, now the new standard is 25% down or 30% down. Or you have to have a better income to debt ratio, right? So that's them telling you no without telling you no.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening. And if any of us sat in the big chair at the bank, it's exactly what we would do.
Of course.
Because we're like, we've got too much risk out there right now. We need to peel back this risk. But I don't want to tell everybody who comes to the bank, oh, no, sorry, we're not loaning money out, because that looks bad. We'll just make it so it doesn't happen. Does that make sense?
It does, man. And I mean, some of this is, I can't blame them. They got a fiduciary responsibility. They're a small town bank. They don't need to be dealing with India and stuff like that. But I'm thinking about all this because my son-in-law just got a job as a banker. He starts in 2 weeks, and we're excited for him. But at the same, I think they've got 6 banks up here in the Cumberland Plateau. So as you were talking about this, I'm just thinking about this new world he's entering into, and I'm excited for him. But at the same time, I think we've created an unfair environment when you have the GSIBs carry zero moral hazard moving forward, and the local and regional banks, they take on all this liability. And I just don't see it going anywhere good for anybody.
It probably isn't. One thing I would throw out there for your son-in-law, I came in aviation when the country was in a recession, but aviation was in a depression. And probably the best thing ever happened to me. Because it taught me a lot of skills about how to survive, how to get by, how to always be looking for the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I've told some people that are in industries going through rough times, is if you get through this, like right now, realtors in Florida, If they can get through this period of time, during that period of time, they're going to learn skills that will make them incredibly successful when times get good.
Yeah, they'll crush it.
And then they will also be able to recognize when times are getting ready to turn bad and be in front of the crowd.
Let's talk about that because you talked about opportunity. I don't know if we've discussed this on here, but if I asked Don or Ted or Alan or anybody watching this morning, hey man, how many red cars did you see on the road yesterday when you got out for church or you went out for lunch or whatever? How many red cars? Do you remember exactly the number? Can you tell me what license plates there were? Of course, the answer would be no. If I said today I'm going to give you $100 for every red car you could send me a snapshot of on your iPhone, and if you get the tag number, I'll give you $250. I bet you'd see them all. So my point of saying that is you need to know what an opportunity is so that you can spot it and exploit it. It's not enough to, look, I'm looking for opportunities. Do you even know what they look like? Then that's your point with the real estate agents. They're going to know, an opportunity. And if you're ready and you got some dry powder, like we talked about, and you can seize that opportunity, exploit it, man, you're going to be ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and that's, it's, I was just talking to one of my kids. I said, experience is that thing you get right after you need it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the benefit of the gray hair and having seen some things. You go, seen something like this before. I know what to do. Sit back, keep some dry powder, and be patient. That's the hardest part. Be patient.
And for those new to the show and you don't know, our Parlance dry powder is cash ready to go.
Cash in hand.
Yeah. So. Craig is on. He says, in aviation, were you flying a biplane? Just wonder. Speaking of the gray
you've been
hair.
talking to my kids. So, no, I have flown a biplane, but they were not the primary mode of transportation at the time. I did some aerobatics back in the day. So,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it was. Watching the world spin around is kind of a fun thing. Speaking of, getting entrenched in a mentality, it wasn't that long ago that nobody was talking about the national deficit, right? In the big scheme of things.
Nobody.
Well, when I say nobody, I mean the mainstream press. It wasn't everyday.
I was going to say Rich Brown and Will Wood have been talking about it.
We have, but if you look back, what?
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're
10 years, right? Very few people, right? But now we're starting to see it everywhere. Now, this is an opinion piece out of the Wall Street Journal. I typically ignore opinion pieces because they're trying to form, yes, it's this person's opinion, but they're really trying to do is form the overall opinion of the people. Yeah. So I ignore most of them. This one got my attention, though, not because of the opinions that are in here, but because we're seeing more and more pieces like this. So we're trying to watch this overall trend. Okay. And so it gets into Americans. It ties back to the demographics we've talked about for quite some time. Americans 65 and older made up 9% of the population in 1960. Today, it's doubled to 18%, and it's projected to rise to 23% over the next 30 years.
Wow.
So this becomes a political problem because you want to cut Social Security and Medicare? Yeah, good luck getting elected.
Yeah.
Right? So that only
I smell an opportunity in there, though.
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
I mean? Absolutely. So they're the only other side of that is to either decrease government spending in other areas or raise taxes.
Yep,
got to do something. Well, if we raise taxes, well, kind of tough to get elected on that because we all know it affects all of us in the end, no matter what they say on the campaign trail. Yep. But the point is, this isn't going to end anytime soon. Right. Also, if we look at immigration, this would be a reason to allow more people into the country.
That's what Chuck Schumer said.
Yep. I'm not making an opinion on the border or any of that stuff. It's just if you want to bring down the average age of a population and you're not having enough babies, the only way to do that is to import people, and that's called immigration.
Yep.
Plain and simple, just looking at the facts of it, guys.
Yep.
So this is going to drive all kinds of other things. And of course, demographics is the slow-moving iceberg in the world of watching things, right? Mm-hmm. So our leadership has been able to see this coming for decades and has done exactly nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've done two things, jack and squat. So you can say that.
That is true. That's a true statement. So again, like the housing thing, where you're starting to see more articles about that, you're starting to see more articles about the national debt, which then tells me the politicians will start talking about it, and they will, quote unquote, do something, which means they will make it worse.
Yep. Because it's
So,
only going to continue to skyrocket. And oh, by the way, if you, because what they're saying is it's going to rise to 23% over the next 3 decades, and you obviously are going to be in that cohort.
mhm,
I mean,
Yep.
so that's our cohort, and
that's it.
yeah, worry about that.
Yep, for sure. So, if we go on the next one here, because it's been a few days and I can't remember what's there. Okay, so the national debt is going to drive certain things. Now, when the younger people look at this, the national debt, they're going to get angry because their taxes are going up to pay for a bunch of old people who didn't take care of the problem when they were young through the political system, right? And that frustration, in combination with the fourth turning, which we've talked about numerous times, is, I think, going to lead to more articles like this. What's this one have to say, brother?
This one says Canada's Conservative Party won a special election in a district in central Toronto, dealing a substantial blow to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party ahead of a national vote expected next year. Voters in Toronto St. Paul's election, Conservative candidate Don Stewart to the House of Commons, flipping a seat that has voted Liberal in every election since 1993. That's 31 years. Stewart won 42% of the vote, according to the preliminary elections Canada data, defeating Liberal candidate Leslie Church, who had just over 40%.
Okay. So the reason I highlighted the Central District of Toronto, this is a small district. This isn't, all of Canada flipped, right? And the other part that was highlighted there was this C has been Liberal since 1993. So this is a change. Those of you old enough to remember the Republican Revolution in 92, right? That was a big changeover, right? When the House, when Congress went majority Republican for the first time in however many years it had been back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've seen here is the start of a change. People are fed up with what the system has been really since, if we put it in the U.S. timeline, really since post-Reagan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that causes upheaval. These things are changing, right? So what I'm looking at here is we're looking at a long-term transition from one phase to another. And it's probably going to take the rest of the decade to get through this. And somebody might say, really, rest of the decade? Well, it took from 68 to 80 to go from JFK and Vietnam to Reagan. That was 12 years, right? So this is going to be a long, drawn-out process, and the world's going to end 43 times during that period of time, right? Exactly. So, it's going to be an ongoing, slow-burning process.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. What's Alan have to say there?
Alan says, my heartache with Social Security and Medicare is when the politicians raid the funds as they have done in the past. This is our money we have put in the funds. Yeah, amen.
Yes, absolutely.
I would have loved it if you're 18 years old, you can sign a document that says, I'll manage it. I want my money. Don't screw with it,
Yep.
But we can't. It's like taxes,
Yep, exactly.
Don says immigration only offsets the increasing costs if they are working and putting into the system. If they're an additional draw in the system, which they are right now,
yes,
let's be clear,
Yep.
they just accelerate the collapse. Don, you are
excellent point. Thanks for pointing out the difference there, because I was pointing out the one side. Thanks for bringing up the other side of that, and you're absolutely right, because a lot of people coming across the border, Trump wasn't lying in the debate when he said they're getting put up in hotels in New York City. And I've read numerous articles about the local residents being like, there was no money for our playground, but you got money for this.
Yeah.
And that stokes that anger, which comes back around to these elections changing over, going, these guys haven't done, anything for me but jack and squat. I'm voting for the other side. Even though I disagree with a bunch of their stuff, you guys haven't done it, so I'll give them a shot.
Yeah.
And that puts upheaval into the system. That creates volatility through a society.
And as we've talked about, and of course, this is anecdotal, but I'm reading that they're giving them credit cards. I'm reading that they're giving them a phone. I'm reading that they're putting them up literally in the Saks, Fifth Avenue. And then I think back to the workers that I brought in from the 401c3 company, 501c3 company, Bridge Refugees, where we used to, hey man, these people that are coming in legally through the Christian community, we're bring them in and let them work for us. And then, like I've said before in the show, Rich, I can make more money doing nothing. And I'm like, I can't afford to pay you anymore. And they're like, I'm gonna go sit on. I mean, not that they're not saying this, but their actions are saying it. I'm gonna go sit on my ass.
Yeah.
And let American taxpayers just pay me to do nothing. I'm like,
Yep.
That's not how you increase the working population that Don is talking about. And we put more workers in to combat this aging cohort.
And I'll add a little context to that, brother. I've got a family member who lives in a state shaped much like Colorado, who is a teacher, and you wouldn't know it by looking at her. She looks like me, from Iowa originally. Okay, fluent in Spanish though, and she would listen in on conversations in the hallway after school, and people from Mexico would come in and they would start off working, picking their kids up, and she would hear the conversations in the hallway and be like, "Oh," the friends would say, "Don't do that, do this," and next thing you know, they wouldn't be working. Just to your point, so there's an education process that goes on. So many, I'm not sure where that number is, come here saying, yeah, I want the opportunity. I want to work, I want to do these things. And then they get educated.
Right.
And find out that isn't necessary if certain boxes are checked on forms. So, you take that away, I'm going to see here. What was it? Don't work, don't eat.
Yeah, exactly. And life is just a series of incentives. I mean, and that's really what taxes should be. In that, okay, society wants you to get married and have kids. Okay, I'm going to incentivize that by you file jointly, I'm going to give you a break. You have a kid, I'm going to give you a tax break. If you own a home, I'm going to give you a tax break. These are the way it should be. Oh, I have a series of incentives to do X, Y, and Z, and that makes the country grow, grow, grow. You have a series of incentives to destroy the economy, which, do illegal immigration and some other things. Like, well, that's what you're going to get. But what does that Craig say?
He says, you think you have it bad. My late father had a council tax bill last week. He's been in 3 years and still wanted to pay. Death and taxes, man.
Yeah. Death and taxes. Tony says, no matter how bad it gets, at least you're not doing it in MOP level 4. Yeah, yet.
Valid point.
And for those of you that don't know what that is, military occupational protective posture level 4 means gas mask, gloves, the whole 9 yards. And Tony, I believe, and he and I and many people on here probably have fought a war in MOP level 4. It is not fun, I will tell you that.
I can only imagine. So, All right, what do we got on the next one here, brother?
On to the next one, my brother. It's all happening again. The supply chain is under strain.
Yeah. So, this one, I've seen a few things about this, and it's starting to pop up more and more. So, in recent weeks, dock workers have threatened to strike on the east and Gulf Coast of the U.S. Longshore workers in German ports have halted shifts in search of better pay. Rail workers in Canada are poised to walk off the job. And let's see if we jump down here. Intensifying upheaval in shipping is promoting carriers to raise rates while raising the specter of waterborne gridlock that could again threaten retailers with product shortages during the upcoming holiday season. So what once was old is new again. And in this case, it's actually coming through from the labor side because of this is the backlash of inflation, right? So to an extent, this is the self-licking ice cream cone because the supply chain helped drive a lot of the inflation. Now the workers in all areas, but in this case specifically those areas, are looking for higher wages and are shutting down shipping, slowing down shipping to get what they want from a labor perspective, which is going to drive prices even higher. Interesting. Yeah. And that's what this last part talks about is this disruption could increase inflation and a source of economic anxiety coming into our presidential election here. And on the bottom there, I forgot to add my yellow. This is in addition to the low water levels of the Panama Canal, which are increasing shipping costs because a lot of them are going down and around South America. or dumping more stuff on either the east or west coast of the U.S. and paying to truck it. And of course, the Houthis continue shenanigans over in the Red Sea.
All that makes a pretty bad witch's brew for the supply chain, man.
Yep, absolutely.
Joseph says, I live near Denver. Absolute train wreck thanks to the mayor. Supply chain issues due in part to a truck driver shortage. Yeah, in some regard, automated trucking can't come soon enough because, I have a friend of ours, their son is a truck. I think he makes, I want to say like $120,000 a year to be a long haul truck driver, which is fantastic. I'm not crapping on. My grandfather was a truck driver. I love it. But at the same time, man, that just shows you kids nowadays, like I'm going to go get a liberal arts degree and have, $130,000 or plus in debt and do nothing with my English degree. Maybe I could work at PetSmart and groom dogs. Meanwhile, you could hop in a truck, and freaking make a lot of money, at least until automated trucks come along.
Yeah, and a large portions of society look down on the person driving the truck,
which is unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yep, absolutely. What's Alan have to say there?
Labor unions are good and bad for the economy. Depends on profits of respective industries. And back to the looking down on people, I've been one of those that have said for decades now that, commercial airline pilots are paid way too much just to be a glorified truck nurse.
Those things pretty much fly themselves anyway. I mean,
that's what I've heard.
Yeah. So that's what they tell me. I mean, I don't know.
You sleep through most of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank
God for first officers. That's all I'm going to say. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Since October, the cost of moving a 40-foot shipping container from China to Europe has increased to about $7,000 from about $1,200. So what, a 6x?
Since October?
Yeah.
In 9 months, it's gone up, what, 600%?
6x?
What?
Just under 6x, 5.8. So now, granted, that's well below the $15,000 peak reached in 21. But again, guys, it's not about, it's lower than it was before. It's the fact that this increase, this 5.x increase, is going to work its way through to retail prices.
And it's only trending in one direction. Let's be clear.
Very true. And so now we're seeing what that will end up in retail prices, which is the little thing we call inflation, right? Yeah. And that's going to drive people's behavior. It's going to drive behavior of central banks. It's going to drive a behavior of employers because people are fed up. They're not going to pay like they used to because wages never keep up. And as we've seen, credit cards balances are going up. Credit card delinquencies are going up. We should probably retouch on that here at some point to update that information. But people are frustrated. You can sense it when you're out and about. I'm sure all you guys have seen that out there. It's everybody's on edge. And they're not looking for a fight, but everybody's on edge and angry, right?
Well, maybe some people are looking for a fight. Well, Dr. Fuller, we said it when he and I spoke last. He said it just feels like, of course, you do with your feelings what you want. I get it, but it just feels like people are spoiling for a fight. Not everybody, some people. And what was it? 3% was all it took for the American Revolution. 3%.
And I see it. I mean, I'm out amongst people all the time, airports, restaurants, hotels, and it's little stuff. I mean, I don't see anybody walking around all bowed up, but it's the little stuff, where a person might in the past move out of the way for someone else. Now they just stand there.
Yeah.
It's that little selfishness, I guess, lack of common courtesy. And then the other person is like, get out of the way,
Right.
And, I'll be the first to say I can get road rage walking through an airport like you wouldn't believe. I mean,
guilty. Yep.
Yeah. So, and it's even worse when I go to a Walmart. The upside of the Walmart is I feel better about myself after I leave.
True.
Yeah. What's Don say there?
Don says, a friend of mine owns a freight dispatch company. She tells me that the larger carriers are dropping rates and running a lot of small owner operators out of business. That's exactly what Walmart did.
Yeah.
They came into a community and prices go low, everything goes out of business, prices go up, and then you're screwed. The trap swings closed. Craig says the only power a working man has is to withdraw his labor. What do you think about that, Will?
Yeah, I agree. And that's the lever that can be pulled. And but there's a danger there as well. and we're
Okay.
gonna talk about that on an upcoming slide. It is a tie-in. Wasn't what I was actually thinking when I made the slide, but let's tie that in when we get there.
Okay.
So let's go back one, please.
Okay.
The bottom circle there, we haven't seen the peak yet. Talking about these shipping rates, they're already up about
Right.
6x. We haven't seen the peak yet. So, and we can also, I didn't circle it here, but it's also going up between Shanghai and LA and Shanghai and New York as well. So, we're not going to get a reprieve there from China to the US.
Hmm.
So, and that's just
Uh,
going to
well,
filter through.
are you saying there was a problem with outsourcing all of our manufacturing to China? Is that what you're saying?
No, not saying that at all. No,
That
no.
that might
But
have been a bad idea.
yeah, yep. And Alan here says he knows of 3 small trucking companies in Virginia have gone out of business. You've seen it all the time, guys.
Yep.
Freightwaves.com. Check their website once a day. You'll almost daily. You'll see this trucking firm went out of business or that one. And it's the smaller ones, of course. But then that stuff that happens on the edges, well, that helps everybody else survive. But in surviving, they're going to drive their costs up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or drive their prices up. Sorry, not their costs up. So,
Brian says, my son got back from his last tour in Iraq. He drove long haul for a couple of years while he decompressed. Then he joined the Dallas PD.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
not married yet, why not go make some money? For 3
absolutely.
years, you could live really small and bank a
Mhm.
lot of cash.
Yep, for sure. So, all right, on the next one here. Chinese cities desperate for cash are chasing companies for taxes, some of them back to the 1990s.
Like Gavin
This,
Newsom.
this is a telltale sign of a healthy, thriving economy in China.
Said no one.
Exactly. So, so this is the reason I wanted to bring this one up is, we've talked about the housing crisis in China. We've talked about all that stuff. Well, their slow motion train wreck over there continues. So,
Hey, look at that. Dr. Fuller's on.
hey,
Welcome back. Welcome back to the United States. Dr. Fuller's been away in the UK over there, rubbing shoulders with Craig Holland, probably. He is driving back to South Carolina today. Be safe, my brother, and we'll talk to you soon.
yes, drive safe. That's the most dangerous part of your trip right there. So,
True.
all right, we can go on to the next one. This is just more of the Chinese thing happening. Okay, now just to show it's not just us here in the U.S. At its limits, Mexico's buckling power grid threatens nearshoring. Okay, so we talk about it here, and we've talked about the reshoring, meaning bringing stuff back from overseas, China, the Far East, back to the U.S. That's going to drive prices up. But part of that was friendshoring and nearshoring. Friendshoring is still, it's a long ways away, but it's friendly countries, and nearshoring would basically be Mexico and Canada. Okay. Well, this is a threat to nearshoring, which, while prices are going to be higher with things made in Mexico than China, it's not as high as having things made here in the US. Okay. Well, this is a threat, a challenge to having that happen. Because here's another country that hasn't invested enough into their power grid. Okay. So all of this, goes into, as a world, and for us as the US, as a society, we're looking for, I think, years of higher inflation as we decouple from the Chinese Great Deflation, is what it was worldwide, since they joined the WTO in 1990. So we're coming back from the other side of that. So if you want to look at it, we just talked about how the shipping costs were at $15,000 per container, went down to about $1,200, came back up. That's kind of what we're going to be doing with overall costs in the world. They were really high. China opened up, that drove prices way down. Now they're coming back up to somewhere in the middle, but we don't think about where they started way back, right? We look at this down here, right? So that's what we're feeling now, is that increase. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I was kind of reading it here. This incoming Mexican president, I mean, she's been a committed leftist her entire life. So, you want to see a train wreck inbound from Mexico?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
good freaking luck down there. You want to, and guess what? If we don't do something about the border, it's about to get way worse.
Yep. Sorry.
I could be wrong.
Yep. So And so if they can't build out an infrastructure and create more jobs in Mexico, what are those people going to do?
Yeah.
Go look for jobs somewhere else, right? And by the way, oh yeah, there's jobs in the U.S., but then once they get here, oh yeah, there's a whole infrastructure for us to sit around and do nothing, like you described earlier, right?
And she's I'm just reading a little bit about her while you're talking here. And she's a climate scientist, a leftist and a climate scientist. And guess what? It's about to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yep.
my God.
What is that you always say? It gets worse before it gets worse.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep.
Little ray of sunshine here.
Yep.
Is that beeping on your end or mine?
It is. Let me go take care of that real quick here while you handle Don's comment there.
All right, brother. Don says, let's see what Don says. I wonder if John Deere is going to help Mexico get their infrastructure in order. And then he's got us a link here. I'll have to check that out, Don. I would imagine no, given that they've elected a committed leftist climate scientist. Yeah, I see a move toward failed policies ahead for Mexico. God bless them. Hope they know what they're doing, and we better secure that border. Welcome back, Brother Will. And I think you're still muted, brother. There we go.
Unmuted. Here we go. So I saw the link Don threw up there for the John Deere thing. And this is going back to Craig's comment about the only power labor has is to withhold their labor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's absolutely right about that. And Don's right about John Deere sending stuff overseas. I think I got a slide in here about that. I'm not positive, but we can preview it here.
There you go.
Thank you. This is an effect of labor at John Deere going, hey, we need more money. Right. Now, were they within their rights to demand that? Well, yeah, inflation was going up. Prices were going up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, if these workers don't go in and say, hey, we need more money because we're getting squeezed by a 1.9% inflation, well, what are they supposed to do? Go bankrupt right? So, but then when you go do that, then a company, because of globalization, can say, well, I can do it cheaper down there. So see you.
Yep.
So what's the right
My dad
answer?
lived in Mexico for, I don't know, a couple of years when I was, I think probably in the late 90s or maybe early 90s. He lived down there for years putting in conveyors because we had offshored a lot of our manufacturing down to Mexico.
Yeah. So that's actually,
that's been ongoing. That's nothing new, folks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is
that was a result of NAFTA, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah. This is just part of the whole cycle, right? And in the past, before computerization, definitely before the internet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was robotics. I'm thinking when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, robotics started changing this stuff, right? And then with globalization, with NAFTA, like you talked about, all these things playing into, now everybody's got to compete against everybody. But as Americans, we have higher expectations for quality of life and all those things. And we all enjoy those things. I do too, right? But you also have to look at, okay, what's realistic sometimes within that. And I'm not interested in living like a, Chinese peasant for that. I don't think anyone is. Mm-hmm. But you have to be realistic about what's the state of the industry, right?
Oh, yeah. But again, the industry is just responding to a set of incentives. You make it cheaper to offshore, they're going to offshore.
Mm-hmm.
And they have and like we've talked about it many times, that company has a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders to make those kind of decisions if that's the way the economic incentives are. Am I missing something?
Nope.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Right. And
hey, John,
you guys beat me to the punch. That's awesome. So I love it. So, and here, this article, rising operational costs, right? So this is, we previewed this entire slide here, guys, but the one thing to look at here on the bottom here, the very bottom part says workers are to be offered, these are John Deere workers for anybody who's jumping on right now. Workers are to be offered supplemental unemployment benefit, which will cover about 95% of their weekly net pay for up to 26 weeks, so half a year, depending on their years of service. So how does this this supplemental unemployment benefit affect unemployment numbers? They can't file for unemployment until that runs out.
Ah,
So you won't see a
and it's
change
for
in unemployment
26 weeks, huh?
numbers
6 months.
for 6 months. 6 months on top of right now is after the election.
Exactly.
Now, this is, 610 staff members, right? This isn't going to move the unemployment number, just John Deere. But you see this across a lot of industries right now, especially tech, as they're laying people off. They're giving them severance for 6, 8, 9 months, and they can't file for unemployment after that. So there's a huge lag now between people getting laid off and filing for unemployment.
Yep. And why is tech hurting right now? Because you can go into Chat GPT or one of the other AI programs
Mhm.
and go, write me a C++ program for a Sierpinski triangle. So, I mean, just the
Mhm.
craziest shit you can think of, and it'll go in a nanosecond, it just spits it out there. And
Yep.
you copy and paste and you're done.
Yep.
Well, hell, I mean, how many people do I really need to work here then?
For sure. And it's the tech industry version of robotics I saw growing up in the Midwest with John Deere, IH, and all those things when they came to be in the 70s and 80s,
Hmm.
right? So, and to your point earlier, this part here, the rising operational costs and declining market demand.
Hmm.
Declining market demand. So John Deere's having a harder time selling stuff. So it's not just the rising operational costs from the labor side.
Yeah.
It's also because people are getting squeezed and not going out buying tractors. And that's when I say people, it's everything from, $1.5 million, $2 million combines down to your little 25 horse John Deere tractor.
Yeah.
Right. So it requires enterprise wide changes in how work gets done to achieve our goals and best position the company for the future. The company has a responsibility too, has a responsibility to the shareholders, and they have a responsibility to the remaining workers too.
Yes.
So they're caught between a yin and a yang there too. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I think it would hold true for all of us. If we invested in a company like John Deere or fill in the blank and they didn't do these things and the stock went down, what would we do? We'd sell the stock. And
Yep.
if they weren't fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility, there's going to be a class action lawsuit, and I will sign on to that in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If the shareholders didn't fire somebody quick,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, not the shareholders, but the board of directors. But anyway,
Yep. So now let's tie this back in. I think it was last week we went through a whole bunch of commodity prices and charts, right?
yep.
So what was everybody wanting when inflation was 9%? They all wanted lower prices, right?
Hmm.
And what did we say? Be careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah.
So this ties back into our John Deere thing, ties back into everything else. Lower crop prices are leaving agricultural equipment sellers with an excess of unsold tractors and combines, leading some to offer discounts and suspend new orders. Hence John Deere's problems. This is from the same article, guys. I cut off the top part of it. This is a chart of corn prices. And you can see from June of 2022 to basically end of June of 2024, that price only went one direction. And we cheer that as consumers. Hey, my corn prices are going down. And it takes a
Yay.
while to filter through, but it affected the farmers, and now it's affecting John Deere, and now it's affecting the workers at John Deere.
Look at you
Okay.
tying it back in there, brother.
Look at that go. Look at me go. All right. So now this is one of those things where it's like you damned if you do, you damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Right. Because if prices come down, eventually it filters back through. And if prices keep going up, then people get hurt too. This is where what we really want in an economy is stability and predictability. And this chart is not that. And as we know, corn is in everything.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Everything from what the cattle eats to the syrup you put on your pancakes, every frickin' that poison that Will's holding there.
So the bottom part of this one here, guys, the company they're referring to here is John Deere, recently trimmed its annual profit forecast for the second time and projected steeper declines in sales of larger agricultural equipment. That's where they make their money at, guys. They don't make their money selling me my little 25 horse John Deere. Yeah, they make some money on it, but the numbers are astounding on this new equipment, the combines and these tractors. And,
Yeah.
it's just astounding the numbers on those things,
Well,
right?
some of them cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
If not millions, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I somehow I wound up looking at used combine prices one night. I mean, you're talking $750,000
Yes, exactly.
for a used one, right?
Yeah.
So, but it also tells me the first part of this is trimmed its annual profit forecast for the second time. That tells me things are accelerating downward.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I'm looking at let's see here. This is a used, I don't know how it can be a used 2024, but it's saying it is. Asking price is 800. This is a John Deere 9RX 640 combine. Let's see. Asking price is $817,000. Then you get a tax benefit of $171,000. We talked about incentives, right? And the market responding.
Yep.
So you're looking at an out the door price of $645,000, or an estimated loan payment of $16,956.
Yeah,
$17,000 a month, and you can harvest that corn. How much? How many times a year?
Once.
Exactly. Not every month.
You're showing out. You're showing out about $750,000 for a machine you're going to use for a few weeks.
Exactly.
And then it sits.
And then
we know what happens to machines that sit. They break.
Yep. They're going to break, and they're going to require a lot of maintenance.
Yep. And I'm sure those parts are really cheap.
Yeah. Here's a 2012 John Deere. So 12 years old. Did you know it's been beat to hell? It's got 8,000 hours on it for 119,000. So you can buy a piece of junk. It's still going to cost you over 100,000.
Yep.
This
is
crazy.
And if it breaks down at the wrong time, you can't harvest your crop. Well, then what?
And then what? Yeah.
Right? So
what's Craig say?
I bet let me try English this time. I bet bread price went up with inflation, so someone is making money. Yep. Oh yeah. And it's going to be, and the question is always who's making money, right? And it's everybody along the line. The wages are the last to adjust to this, and it's just the way it is because prices move and then wages move, right?
Yep.
It's not. I mean, of course, companies are going to hold off on those wage increases, right? But it's not. I really don't think it's some grand conspiracy, right? You can't, as a company, you can't raise your wages until you've seen the increase in cash flow, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's a catch-22.
It is. It certainly is.
So watch those commodity prices, guys. What's this one say here to send us out, Rich?
This is what bird flu looks like under a microscope, and it's just piles of cash. Oh, that should own the internet today. That is awesome.
So
in a very sad way.
It is, and of course, as the election comes up, something we're hearing about bird flu again. I'm sure that will become a threat and require all sorts of changes to the electoral process. Yeah.
I see vote from home coming. Ted says, I cannot see inflation as anything but a harsh, unfair tax. Yeah, me and you both, brother. You're absolutely right.
And let's use that experience we talked about before, right? So it's really the most harsh and the most unfair on people who do not own assets.
100%.
So who does it hurt the most? Lower income people, financially uneducated or unsophisticated people, right?
Yeah.
But everybody who has owned assets since 2019, and by assets here I can talk stocks, homes, land, any real property like that, those are booming, right? So it really becomes the haves and the have-nots then.
Yeah.
And
that's correct.
Now, if we're looking at at some point, we're going to look at a prolonged period of stagflation or worst case deflation, right? Then it flips the other way and people who own assets get hurt.
It does, but let's go back. You talk about the haves and the have-nots. We talked about people spoiling for a fight. To me, this is one of those things where if you look toward history, the Bolsheviks, the Mao's Great Leap Forward, the Khmer Rouge, anywhere where this kind of like it just keeps getting wider and wider, and you're going to have this kind of problem.
Yep.
The division is there. The anger is there. Like, well, what do I have to lose, man? I got nothing to lose.
Yeah. Yep. It's that desperation, and then there's always somebody comes along willing to capitalize on that, right?
Yeah.
Same names you just said, and
Mhm.
but those desperate, angry people are looking for someone like that. And earlier, I think it was Don threw up a comment about the elections ongoing in France right now with
Yeah.
the
Far right party.
yeah, exactly. And why is that? Frustrated over a lot of this stuff, all the
Yeah.
immigration from Africa, all the issues from that, the burning of cars, the inflation they're experiencing over there, the tax load over there is incredible because of their vast social safety net. People are frustrated. People are out there working, going, "Why should I bother?" Right?
Yeah. I think they're beyond frustrated. I think they're pissed off. You know.
Yep.
Alan says these farm equipment products are technologically equipped to the max. They almost drive themselves. If broken, only John Deere is the only one that can and required to repair it.
Yep.
What does Don say?
Um, He says he thinks a lot of resentment towards John Deere these days is related to this. For fiscal year 2023, John Deere used its $10 billion profit to provide massive compensation for company bigwigs. A total of $26.7 million went to CEO John May. Shareholders saw dividends of more than $1.4 billion. Yeah,
And we,
right.
we talked about this with the airlines. I don't pity the
Mhm.
airlines when they were struggling. Like, hey, man, I get it.
Yeah.
I fly all the time. That's your industry. But at the same time, when you take your profits and then you repurchase stock just to
Mhm.
artificially inflate the price, it's like, hey,
Yep.
man, this is market manipulation. How's this not a crime?
Well, and it's market manipulation, but it's also being driven by Wall Street because they're like, if you don't, if this company over there does a dividend of X, if you don't keep up with that, we're going to pull our money out of you and put it over there, right?
Yeah.
So it drives that. Stock buybacks are another way to do that. Stock buybacks traditionally, I don't think so much now, but traditionally stock buybacks happened when the idea was there was nowhere better to put the money. In other
Mhm.
words, there wasn't a new market to go explore and exploit, right?
Mhm.
So then you would do a stock buyback because you want to get some sort of return on that capital. Capital always looks for a yield, right?
Mhm.
Well, if I can't go into a new market, say as a airline, I can't go into a new market and make, I don't know, let's just make up a number, make a 15% return on that money, right? But I can go buy back my stock and for essentially zero risk, make a 10 or 12% return. Well, maybe if I can make 20% of that new market, it'd be worth doing that, right? So traditionally, stock buybacks were done when things were slowing and there was no place better to put the money. I think that's changed now because of the Wall Street incentives.
Well, it's changed now because of that, yes, and also because once you took the CEO position and you made it, you get paid relative to the stock improvements, not just a flat fee.
Mhm.
Well, now he's got a reason to want to manipulate the stock price.
Absolutely.
So
And so, and why do CEOs have that incentive now? Well, remember in the 90s when it was like the CEOs making, 727x what the average worker is making. Well, that became a big political football under Clinton. So all the companies went, hey, we got to get this pressure off of us. So we're going to drop, let's say the CEO is getting paid $7 million a year. Okay.
mhm,
So we're going to make your base pay 700,000
mhm.
and then the rest is going to be in stock options. Well, now his pay went down, so that other ratio went down. So, oh, look at us, we're good people, right? Well, but it
And you gave him a
bastardized
means
it.
by
It
which to manipulate that.
bingo. So it bastardized the incentives,
Yeah,
and then you went from companies that were run for long-term stability and gain to quarter-to-quarter results.
exactly.
Yeah,
Quarterly stability and gain, or not even take
exactly.
stability out of it, quarterly
Yeah,
gain.
exactly.
Yeah,
And so then, it's one of those be careful what you ask for things, but it took 10, 15 years to start to see the real effects of that.
yeah,
But in the
exactly.
short term political cycle, they got to check the box. Oh, we're the good people. We got them to do this. But then 10, 15 years down the road, most people don't put those two things together and understand that they cause it themselves.
Yes, exactly. Craig says all the French immigrants are coming to the UK. Yeah.
Mm, yeah,
Well,
not good.
not good.
Yeah.
Eric is on. Good morning, Eric. He's on YouTube
Morning.
platform today instead of Facebook.
Awesome.
Uh, all right. Well, any other good news to give us this morning?
Nope. That's all the rays of sunshine I have. So how about you take us out, brother?
All right, guys and gals out there, Warrior Nation, thank you for joining Will and I again this Monday. Are we going to be back next Monday, Will?
Yes. Yep.
Good.
I'm good for Mondays all the way through July.
Perfect. I'll see you guys next week. And remember, the fight is coming. Be ready.